The Warehouse is open. Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 43, Controversial Game-Worn Opinions, or let's call this Hot Takes on the Hobby for short, an honest discussion. Joined today in the Warehouse by Stu Oxenhorn, Senior Director, MeiGray Vintage, our friend Jim Montague, Vice President of MeiGray Authenticated, Geoff Spaid, who directs the NHL program. All of the gentlemen can be reached by email. soxenhorn@milestones.com, jmontague@milestones.com, that's Montague, and our friend Geoff Spaid, Spaid, GSPAID, @milestones.com. Gentlemen, how are we today? Stu, start with you. What's going on, sir?
Not too much. Just seems like I'm the only one here at work, though.
You know, I recently saw a meme, depending on meme or just something on Twitter. We've officially reached the business world quote of, yeah, why don't we circle back after the holiday season? And, I worked in sports radio for many a year, and the week, we used to be, Stu, that the week of Thanksgiving, you'd go to work on Monday, and the on-air people were the only people who were in the building. And you'd be like, where's the salespeople? Where's the people in traffic? Where's the people who do continuity for commercials? Maybe an engineer would show up, and then you would send out a mass email like, hey, is there food coming in for said show? And everybody would have the out-of-office automatic, and you're like, it's the Monday before the Wednesday of Thursday. Now, that has pushed back to the week prior to Thanksgiving, where people, and God bless you if you have time off and family and you're going here, going there. I smell what the rock is cooking, as they like to say, Mr. Oxenhorn. There you go. Mr. Montague, good to see you again. Welcome back inside the warehouse. How are we doing?
All right.
And Mr. Spaid, looking resplendent in a Stadium Series gear with the Weagle. We appreciate your attendance today in class.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I have a few different things about me today, such as the mustache, and also you can see I got a window replaced. And I'll tell you what, Scott, window salesmen, they're pretty tricky people. And I had one stop by to talk to me about my windows, and very convincing pitch, but I didn't end up going with him because I could see right through it.
I'm the one with the dad jokes here, Geoff, but I appreciate it.
You can edit this, right?
You know what? No, that's going to stay in posterity. That's something.
I mean, look, it's a real pain in your glass. Well, these kind of jokes, I get it.
I mean, honestly, and again, I know window salesman, no jokes here, but like one can turn into two, can turn into six, and let me just get you the better deal. And all of a sudden, they're multiplying like rabbits. So, Godspeed. Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 43, looking in a mirror, or maybe through Geoff's mirrored glass. Controversial game-worn opinions, an honest discussion. Gentlemen, this is like one of the fun ones. It's almost like a town hall, a forum. And you get these from new collectors, old collectors, established collectors just dipping their toe in the water. Hey, what does everybody think? There's constant crowdsourcing. And the opinions differ, but they're always strong ones. Stu, we'll start with you as the warehouse is open. What is your most controversial game-worn opinion?
I don't know if it's necessarily mine, but I think one of the biggest controversial opinions in the hobby is flipping. I think you really have to take into context and to define flipping, because I think a lot of people look at it different ways. But I think the way that most people are looking at it is someone that's buying a jersey and then just immediately, turning it over for, either a higher price or whatever they get for it. It gets a lot of people really angry. I think it gets a lot of people angry because, it just takes it out of somebody else being able to get it, maybe somebody that really wanted it. And I'm going to take the tack that I don't have an issue with flipping. It's not something that I've done, but at the same time, I think as a hobby, and a hobby that can be costly, it's a way to, make money to fund your next purchase. I mean, if you have the experience and the knowledge and, the money to be able to, buy X jersey and then use that money to buy something that you wanted, and to make a little money, to get that jersey, I don't really see anything wrong with it.
Geoff, we'll jump over to you before getting your most controversial. How do you feel about the art of flipping?
I mean, it's a tricky art, and it's something that, as Stu said, it's frowned upon for the most part. I think there's a lot of people who I've seen and heard opinions that there's very few ways you can quickly kill your reputation in this hobby. And flipping is one of those ones where sometimes it will really, say, muddy the waters of your reputation for some people, where other people just don't care. I mean, look, we're in a hobby, we're in a collectible hobby, a hobby with stuff that's very valuable. Flipping is always going to be a thing that happens. And so it's just mitigating how much you flip, I think, is really the key for some collectors. And I personally don't care much for flipping. So I would prefer to not see it, but I know it is a realistic thing that happens.
Mr. Montague, over to you. And let me interject for a split second. I am not a fan of flipping, but as Stu said, and as Geoff said, context is everything. But it does often come down to, and we all judge, whether we want to admit it or not. Again, honest talk here. If someone gets something and then the next day, if you honestly are, hey, something else just came available, this is the only reason it's back out on the market, or you do have collectors masquerading as dealers, you're like, well, are you a dealer or are you a collector? Don't tell me it's all about the chase, it's all about the hunt, and then all of a sudden you get it, and this is a player you've always admired, grew up styling your goaltending play about said person, and then you get one and it's gone. Whether a week, 2 weeks, the one sort of goofy thing that I have to add to this, and when don't I add goofy things, it's kind of like instant replay and what defines a catch in the end zone, or did he make a football move? Did you hold the jersey long enough to qualify as it actually making it into your collection, or is it still in the house of someone else and you're making layaway payments and you are now transacting that sweater away? There's a lot of goofy S that comes through my inbox with proposals and, hey, what about this? What about this? And I'm all about the creativity and trying to bring something new into the collection. But if it does look like a flip, I tend to go, what are we doing here and at what cost? Mr. Montague, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of feel a little bit like Stu. I don't really care about flipping. It doesn't bother me. I kind of take the tact of, look, if somebody thinks something's undervalued and they get it at a decent dollar to then turn it around the next day, good for them. That's my opinion.
Yeah,
but I agree with what you were saying. Yeah, I mean, if you got guys who were like trying to make a deal and they got something on layaway and then they're trying to sell to you, yeah, it's shady and bad. But if I just go out and see said jersey for some guy is listed for $300 and I'm going in my mind, geez, that's like a $700 jersey, and I buy it, well, good for me then.
Right. There is the constant comment of, it's your jersey. You can ask and sell whatever you want for it. And if you get it, you get it. And if you don't, you'll adjust accordingly. And then we start digging up the backstory and saying things like, well, didn't you just last Thursday? I do understand that as well. Jim, your most controversial game-worn sweater opinion.
I know it's really controversial. I feel like, as the hobby's gotten more into really being very specific about game dates on everything from, kind of started with basketball, but, hockey does a lot now too. Everybody needing to know every exact game that shirt is worn. The sort of, I'll call them fake milestones, for lack of a better term, where people are saying, well, this was worn in his third away game where he scored a goal on the backhand. You know what I mean? And like, I think that adds value to a shirt. So that's my controversial. It's like, slow down on the fake milestones.
Understood. There are a lot of people that do add a little bit to the story, and you're like, was it really necessary? I totally get it. Geoff, you chuckled. What's your most controversial one, man?
I mean, mine's kind of the same as Jim's. Is the whole as the hobby's grown, people are putting a lot of weight into all those milestones, whether or not they are actually milestones. And it feels like anymore, it's no longer a hobby. Some people, it feels like it's no longer a hobby of just enjoying a jersey you get. It's a hobby of car salesmanship, of trying to one up the next thing. And it's like, my controversial take is, I think jerseys need to be treated more like conversation pieces where we talk and listen, rather than, oh, you have X jersey, well, I have Y jersey that's better. And then someone's like, well, I have Z jersey that's better. I mean, my controversial take is just that. Listen more and realize that, just because you have a cool jersey doesn't mean someone else doesn't have just as cool, if not cooler, or less cool jersey.
Mine is, and I'm just going to throw it out there, boys, and please feel free to comment. This is a hobby about sharing. And shared experiences and shared knowledge and what have you found. And I appreciate all of the pictures. What makes me sort of back away is when we cross from sharing of knowledge and sharing of experiences into, I'm showing this to just, there's my hand in the camera, rub it in your face. At some point, we cross the line of, hey, look what I got. Not sure if you notice, I got this. And again, that may come across as catty from me. It is not. I go with God, collect whatever, however, how many. And you're right. I can hear the chattering class in my massive oversized satellite dish ears saying to myself, then don't look at the posts if you don't want to see the posts about, oh, look at this, look at this. I'm happy regardless. But at some point, we tend to lose our way as far as tact goes. Geoff, I saw a nod from you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm going at. Is I feel like there's some moments where I've seen in the groups or I've seen at shows where someone's really excited about something, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, here's what I have. Did you see this? Did you see this? And it's, I don't know. I feel like sometimes people like to steal thunder, but I agree with you, Scott.
Not a fan of the Thunder Stealers. Amongst the others, and there are many of the controversial, Stu, I'll start with you. What do you think of wearing a game-worn sweater that was purchased? Is that an absolute no-go? Or do you make a small allotment, as I do? You can wear them when you go to the expos. Just pray to God nobody's carrying coffee, mustard, or a nice Merlot.
Yeah. I mean, one, I think a lot of it depends on, you can take it different ways. You can depend on value. You can depend on, is there historical significance? Because that drives me crazy when I see people wearing, something that's really valuable or really of historical significance, that something can happen to it. But, that could get me. But I guess the thing that gets me the most about people wearing jerseys is I don't think they realize sometimes how much you affect the authentication of the jersey. Now, again, it's your jersey. You can wear it, especially if it's a, lower value jersey, although a lower value jersey may, be of tons more value to some other person. So it's hard to define those lines. But my point, I guess, is, and I've seen this numerous times. I'll use Yager as an example, of people that will wear, a collector that'll wear a Yager jersey, 20, 30 times. He'll wash it 20, 30 times or 15 times. And then as an authenticator getting that jersey, the jersey, may have only been worn 7, 8 times. And it looks like it's been more, washed 20. And it just throws everything out of balance, and it makes the shirt almost unauthenticatable, and, a lot less valuable.
Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 43, controversial, game-worn opinions, and honest discussion, hot takes on the hobby, if you will. Jim, adding on to what Stu just said, low-price sweater, generic player, Scott Linn, who barely skated 4 minutes, but had 1 repair. Yet somebody wore the Scott Linn sweater 1 or 2 times, and the repair...
Is that when you tripped over the blue line?
Yes, that's when I also tried to jump over the blue line, but because I have a vertical of a phone book, if anybody remembers what those are, it was just bad. I'll show a video from the Capitals Media Camp several years ago, Stu. You will love it. And I know, stop telling you what's funny and what's not funny. But Jim, if there's a repair on this, somebody wears this sweater, low priced. Again, Scott Linn, total 4th liner, multi-scratch per season. That's not what I did. It's what I contributed. But the wearing of the sweater loosened the repair a little bit. And now I bought that sweater and I look, and the repair, which was tight and sutured up, has now become frayed. And it's affected the, I saw that repair matched to a photo. I know it's legit. Everybody else does. But the repair no longer looks like the repair did when it was done by the trainer. Your thoughts, sir?
Goes back to what Stu was saying. I think really you just have to think about, if you're going to wear your shirt, figure out what your plan is when, 5 years down the road. Do you want to sell this shirt? Do you just want to keep it in your collection, wear it all the time? But you're going to affect your ability to move that piece. You're going to affect your ability to authenticate that piece. And no matter how much you know about it being real or where you got it from, if you're altering the shape that it was in when you got it, that's a problem when trying to move it in the future.
Mr. Spaid, to you, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to yuck someone's yum if they got a jersey and they want to wear it. It's their piece of property. They can do whatever they want with it. So don't take my next words as you got to follow what I say. But the way I look at it is regardless of value, regardless of who it is, what it is, at the end of the day, we are just temporarily keepers of these jerseys. As everyone knows, we don't live forever. And so one day, regardless of who the player is, regardless of what the jerseys are, they'll get passed down to family members, they'll get sold in estate sales, they'll get auctioned off, and each of us only gets to temporarily hold on to a jersey. What that might be for decades, that might be for 10 minutes. But my goal in collecting, and as Stu and Jim kind of said as well, keeping the jersey in its pristine condition as it was worn on the ice is my goal. Because I know I won't always have this, and if I can keep a piece of history alive just a little longer, then I'm going to do that. So for wearing them to games and getting nacho cheese all over and a couple beers spilled on, no, I stay away from game worn. That's why I have a couple authentics. Now, game issued, wear all the game issued jerseys you want, in my opinion. Those are fine, but game worn, once it's a part of the game, once it's part of the league's history, that's where I kind of draw the line.
Though there are those who are in the collecting space that have spent a pretty penny on a game-issued, star player. And God bless, collect what makes you happy, collect what you love. Even something like that, this was prepared for a Yager, an Ovechkin, a McDavid. You want to wear that, that's, I don't know, Stu, if it follows suit with like super expensive cars. It's like, I've got this beautiful 55 Thunderbird, but I never want to drive it, and I never want it to leave the garage for fear of a pebble to the windshield, or a tree branch during a windstorm scraping up the side. And I'm like, holy shnikes, I gotta now do work on this. It does affect the authenticity / constitution / remarketability / although I'm popping my own balloon here. It was issued. It was never worn on the ice, dude. Go with God and have fun. Thoughts?
I mean, a game, if you want a game issue jersey, it shouldn't be. I agree with Geoff in that, game issue jersey to us as a game worn collector really doesn't mean anything. It's not historic. It's not anything. And in those regards, go wear it all you want. But if you want it to be a game issue jersey and you want it to stay a game issue jersey for collectible reasons, for monetary reasons, if it was, a McDavid, then you shouldn't wear it. But to buy a game issue to wear, I have no issue with that. But if you want to keep it in that condition to be able to sell it as a game issued, I would not wear it.
Along those lines, Mr. Montague, over to you. Autograph, always a very common and sometimes heated, like I'm an autograph, not me personally, but collector A is an autograph seeker and wants to really have somebody sign it. And there are people who, on both sides, you get, no, leave it as it was when it came off the ice, or go, if you want to have them sign on the number, there's a ton up for sale on social media, on different platforms, and you see them right on the number. Sometimes that's how they came from the team, just to the right of the crest, on the crest. I am a fan of less controversial, sort of right in the middle. If you have to get it signed, sign the fight strap, because nobody's going to see it. And while that's not how it was when it came off the ice, the exterior of the sweater, not taking into consideration interior sleeve pilling or chest pilling or anything like that. All that stuff happened on the ice. You added a Sharpie on the fight strap. Fine. That doesn't necessarily affect, although if you go back, and Stu and Jim, you can certainly talk about this, as can you, Geoff, there are plenty of fight straps show lots of fabric and pilling and rusted out, whatever. You take a Sharpie across that, you're in essence damaging the on-ice, in-game constitution. Jim, start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that whole idea of signing behind the crest or on the fight strap just kind of weird. If you want to go to all the trouble
Full
of getting a shirt
Monty.
signed, just have it signed where you want to get it signed, where you can see it. I mean, that's part of the idea of having somebody autograph something so you can see it, I think. Personally, myself, I don't have any of my stuff signed. I don't want it signed, but that's my take of how I want stuff. It's funny you were saying, I think I might have said this before in one of our other podcasts, where it's like the hockey guys really seem to be the ones that are a little more, uh, um, you know, uh, vocal about the not having stuff signed. Whereas, like, we do a lot of work with basketball, and for my take for the basketball collector, it doesn't really seem to bother them one way or the other. They don't really seem to have a huge opinion about it. Uh, I think that a shirt that's signed seems to sell just as well as one that's not, because those guys are looking specifically at stats for a shirt. So if my basketball jersey A is signed and the guy had a triple double and they won, and it doesn't matter to them if it was signed or not. So I don't know if that answered the question, but back for me, like, I just think that going back to you talking about signing it somewhere else in the shirt, I mean, if somebody wants a sign, usually if you're having something signed, it's because you want to display it and have everybody see the signature. So if you put it behind the crest or on the fight strap, nobody sees it.
Stu, over to you.
Yeah, personally, I don't like when a jersey's signed. I like it as the condition it came off the ice. But I also am realistic that if it is a shirt I really want and it is signed, I'll deal with it. I think you'll find a lot of shirts that, come signed from the team. That doesn't bother me at all, really. If the team decided to market them that way. I think a lot of collectors that want things signed, it just adds that other little personal touch from the player, I guess. And that's why they want it. And I mean, that's fine. As long as they, again, just understand that when you go to market something down the road, there are people like me, that, and like a lot of other collectors we know that, will pass on a jersey that's signed at times. So that will affect your marketability. But, we always come back to that. It's your jersey. You can do what you want with it. But I think a lot of collectors should, and, especially ones that are collecting and putting a lot of money into stuff and are looking to get that money back, have to be real, be careful and make sure that, the hobby as a whole, I think, does frown upon that. And they need to just be aware that, again, the marketability down the road can be a factor.
Geoff, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, Jim and Stu, I think they wrapped it up pretty good. I will just once again vocalize. I don't understand the signing the fight strap or the crest, behind the crest. Why are you getting something signed that no one's ever going to see? As they said, like, if you want it signed, get it signed where you want it. I mean, I have little problem with signing numbers, or I don't care much for the signing of the crest, but I mean, like they said, I still will. I don't get anything signed. I don't plan on getting anything signed because, as I said, I think I'm a keeper of this just for a short while, and I'd like to keep it in that condition. But if you're going to get it signed and you really want it signed, get it signed on the numbers. The fight strap, the crest, that's behind the crest. That's just, I don't get the point of it. You don't see it. Nobody sees it. What are you going to do? Break it out of the display case and be like, look, this guy signed it right here on the fight strap. That's all rusted and corroded and gross already from all the sweat, blood, and everything else. I don't get autographs personally, but that's just me.
It's Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 43, Controversial Game-Worn Opinions or Hot Takes on the Hobby. An honest discussion, a lot of H's right there. Talking to Stu Oxenhorn, Senior Director of MeiGray Vintage, Jim Montague, Vice President of MeiGray Authenticated, and our friend Geoff Spaid. Not that Jim and Stu aren't our friends, they are. Geoff is the director of the NHL program. All gentlemen can be reached through MeiGray.com, S. Oxenhorn, J. Montague, and G. Spaid. Geoff, we'll start with you for this one, and it's a doozy. In your opinion, what do collectors overvalue and undervalue when it comes to game-worn sweaters? And you can sort of tilt that, like, where do the pricing comps are always instantly judged by the court of public opinion. Why is it that price? Why is it too low? Why are you coming in there? Where did you get that? And then, you often read, and this is my humble experience, you often read where people price something and then they adjust, and then comes this sort of anger, either direct or hinted at, like, well, how come no one's buying it? This hobby sucks. It's like, wait a second. The sweater's worth what it's worth at the time. You don't have control over hot streaks, cold streaks, injuries, traded away from organizations. You don't have control over, let's say you won an auction and you and I were the battling finalists for said piece, a Stu Oxenhorn game-worn sweater. And I paid $1,000 and you were in at $900, and I want my $1,000 back. Yet the third place bidder was at $550, and that may be closer to what it markets at. And for Stu, it's probably a $5,000 sweater. Maybe we just got in really low. But people expect to get what they put into it, and that's also a controversial, like, again, there's depreciation for, as I mentioned, myriad of reasons. You don't, well, at auction, it sold for this. An auction is a vacuum between two finalists. You don't know where the other 7 or 8 interested parties were on that night. Maybe they were vacationing. Maybe they had no extra money because they recently experienced family tragedies. Maybe real life intervened, and they're like, damn, I would have jacked that thing up to $12K because it's an Oxenhorn, and you never see his stuff. I know I'm throwing a lot of opinions here. Auctions are not necessarily ever the true value of a sweater because you don't know who is taking place on that night. I know that's a little controversial, but back to the value, you don't always deserve to get what you put in. Mr. Spaid, start with you on valuation.
So first off, Scott, I got to say, if we were bidding on an Oxenhorn game-worn jersey, a Stu Oxenhorn, you wouldn't beat me. I would be all in on that.
Fair.
All in. So first and foremost, let's set the record straight there, Scott. But something I think that collectors overvalue, this is probably going to be the hottest take I have. I think collectors overvalue wear, especially on newer jerseys. The jerseys where people are going to be like, they used to only wear 1 or 2 sets all season. Yeah, that's not the world we live in anymore. And I think you can get a really cool jersey that doesn't have a lot of wear, and that's okay. I think there are jerseys out there that have almost no wear that are better than some of the most beaten up jerseys out there. So I think a lot of people overvalue wear specifically. What do they undervalue? I think people tend to undervalue what I'll call the future prospects of the jersey. What I mean by that is a lot of people want to take the gamble. Well, don't want to take the gamble, I should say, that, so-and-so player is going to pan out really well. And they want to have their cake of waiting to buy so-and-so player's jersey. And then when Scott Linn, we'll say that's the player, when Scott all of a sudden becomes a 50-goal scorer, well, everyone wants Scott's jersey that were $4.95.
When Scott Linn makes it to the length of the ice without being gassed, that's a milestone you want to sell.
But once they reach that pinnacle, once the player reaches that pinnacle, everyone's like, well, their jerseys were $4.95. Now I want it for $4.95. I mean, I think a lot of people undervalue and don't want to take that risk of having to go out on a limb and say, you know what, I'm going to take a gamble on this player, on this rookie, on this guy who was just traded to the team, and say, you know what, I'm willing to have a good shirt, even a great shirt, that might go from $1,000 to $300 if this guy flops. And at the end of the day, I think that's all part of the hobby. And I think a lot of people aren't willing to do that. And I think a lot of people, they feels like it bites them in the butt because they don't go with their gut. So those are my 2 hot takes, one for each.
Jim Montague, over to you, sir, on the subject.
Way better answer than I would have. He kind of summed everything up. But, one of those things about this hobby is that it is, I think Stu said the word before, a lot of it does become personal to some extent. You have certain reasons why you like certain players or collect certain items. And I myself have definitely overpaid in the past for items because I've wanted something, bad enough. So my overpaying for something doesn't change the shirt's value. So to say, I'm just willing to overpay for it because I really wanted it in my collection, knowing that I would never get back out what I put into it. So I've done that before.
Like a mid-knee lifting singlet or something like that.
Yeah. So, so I did that for an old Bruins back, I don't know, at this point, probably 20 years ago. I mean, I made a deal with somebody and I knew I was majorly overpaying for it, but I just wanted that shirt bad enough. And I never thought for a minute at the end of the day that I was going to get my money back out of it. It was just about to put that shirt in my collection. But almost what Geoff's saying, I think some of it just has to do with how the hobby is today. I think a lot of people look at this, again, when we started this, you could get shirts for $200 and $300 that were really good shirts that you could potentially move in. Like I know Stu and I talked about this in the previous podcast where sometimes you just buy stuff because you knew it was going to be good trade bait down the road. It was really something that didn't fit your collection, but the shirt was hammered or had a certain patch or whatever that you in your mind kind of put this in the back burner that, hey, I'm going to use this for trade bait down the road. With the prices of things now, it's really not something you can do. When you're looking at a lot of times your base price on a guy anymore is, $500 on the low end to $600, just for the fourth line, winger, so at that point you can't do that. So everybody does look at this hobby more in terms of investment than they do. You're still collecting what you like, but I think people are getting a little bit into what Geoff was saying. They're making decisions based on their wallet as much as their desire for a piece. Whereas in the past, so I would just say, "Oh, my desire for the piece is there. I want it."
Right.
But if the shirt I'm talking about was probably back in 2002 or 3, I remember doing it for Gord Kluzak, and if you're trying to do that now, it probably just wouldn't even be cost effective to do that. I'd be paying way too much for it. If I extrapolated out what I did for that shirt to today's standards, I just would never make that deal probably.
Mr. Oxenhorn, over to you. Undervalue, overvalue, a lot of topics, a lot of opinion in that little chunk.
Yeah, I mean, and first I was going to say, I do think people overvalue wear, but I'll take a bigger hot take on it. I think, and it's one of my pet peeves, some collectors overvalue what they have and undervalue what they want. So, when you're trying to make a deal with someone and someone has something, it's capitalism. It's, they want the most for it. And if they have it, same jersey, it's maybe, $1,000. But if they want it and they're trying to buy it, they're giving you every reason why it's only worth $600.
Very fair. And it does happen. It's like, well, this is what I'm thinking. Okay, again, it's yours. Ask and trade. But sometimes a deal could get done, but and again, nobody wants to offend either. I find myself when trying to sell, not flip, but when trying to make room for new items in the collection, there have been pieces and I've been approached and said, well, something to sort of to piggyback on what Jim had said. Somebody will come to you and say, well, I get these for this price, or I got these in the past for this price, and I don't pay any more than that. And my answer politely is, please tell me where they are at that price, and I'd like to buy 5 of them at this, at that rate. And it's like, those days are long gone. And if there's, ample stock, and I'm just like, look, I got into a sweater at $800, and right now, there's a bunch available at $595, and I would still like to move it. I understand that I'm going to have to make accommodations. It's not worth what it was when I purchased it. That stuff happens. Again, it's a hobby, but there are certainly business aspects of it where you're like, yeah, this guy's hurt. This guy there's plenty out there at a cheaper price. Mine might have a little more wear, value, or overvalue, undervalue, whatever. But you like this one, for whatever reason, sure, I'm going to have to calm down. Like, it is ultimately about flexibility. Jim, we'll start with you on this one. And you guys did touch on it, with the game wear being super important. We read descriptions of pieces for sale or for trade all the time. It's hammered. And you're like, I want it because I want it. I don't necessarily want to have it and pay a premium because it does have 10 repairs. Does that make it cooler? Yeah, maybe. But where is the hammered index? Where is the hammered Beckett's, where it says, 1 to 3 repairs, it adds $50. 7 to 10 repairs, it adds $1,700 to $2,000. And you're like, you know what I want? I want it matched video or photo. And if it's got proper documentation and it's gone through, the proper inspections, it's what I want. I like wear. Everybody likes wear. Jim, the floor is yours.
Well, was there a question there? No, just kidding.
Funny boy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a wear guy. I like wear. So, if you're trying to talk about, some guy saying something is hammered and somebody saying it's not, I think part of the thing you got to take into account, and I don't know how you do that, is how long has somebody been in the hobby and how much stuff have they seen? So, like, if you go back and we were collecting shirts in the late 90s or whatever, and, a shirt was hammered, it was hammered, but if a guy didn't start collecting till 2010 and he sees a whole bunch of shirts with what we deem as very light wear, and then he sees a shirt with 5 repairs, to him that might seem hammered. So he's not wrong. That's just his assessment of everything he's seen.
Right.
In his mind, compared to all the shirts he's seen, this thing's hammered. So, I think it's just really about, as long as use is described properly on the shirt, doesn't matter whether somebody calls it hammered. If you really needed to know, if you're looking at the picture and he's saying it's hammered, and you're going, this doesn't look hammered to me at all. You got to ask the question, well, what's making this hammered? Have the repairs I'm not noticing? Is there, so there's a little bit of it's incumbent on the buyer to ask some of the right questions as well to get the information they need to make the decision they want to make. But part of what you were saying, I agree with too, in the same breath, is, that as photos are much better and things become, more noticeable than images, from light marks to, anomalies in logos and numbers and what have you, a good photo match takes me over the top too. I'm good with something that has light wear when I see a really good photo match of it.
Stu and Geoff, you guys have both addressed the wear thing, whether it be underrated or undervalued, overvalued previously. Anything to add before we head to one more question on the topics?
No, I think I'm pretty good.
I am sort of a wear guy too, but at the same time, it depends on what someone did in a jersey as well. I'll use Jeremy Roenick as an example. I had 2 Roenick jerseys. One had like 60 repairs. It was a Blackhawks. It had over 60 repairs. And I have another one. It was a Flyers that he scored just an overtime game-winning goal in the playoffs to knock Toronto out. And it had like 1 mark, and of course it was a really good photo match with the 1 mark on the front to him jumping up in the air after scoring the OT game winner. So I would take that OT game winner over the 60 repairs. So it's preference. But I do want a shirt that at least shows use. That I don't have to try, if someone sees it, you don't have to sit there and try to explain to them why it's game worn. They can just see it.
Final hot take for now. We're talking to Stu Oxenhorn, Oxenhorn at MeiGray.com, Senior Director, MeiGray Vintage, Jim Montague, J Montague, Montague at MeiGray.com, VP of MeiGray Authenticated, and our buddy Geoff Spaid, G Spaid, SPAID, at MeiGray.com, Director of the NHL program. It's Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 43, Controversial Game-Worn Opinions. And this is one of those where we could also crowdsource and get some emails into sales@MeiGray.com. Got other hot takes that you want to, expound upon and you'd like to hear the panel have at it? Please, by all means, email us. We'll do another easily in this series, and I'm sure that there's more that are going to come out of this. Geoff, I'll close with you. Does the style of the jersey really matter to you when purchasing? And again, it can be a hot take because people are like, I only buy home, I only buy road, and I only buy thirds, or I only want alts, and the alts are valued at this because they're rare, they're fewer, they're far between. But if you're a wear person, maybe there's not so much wear because these pieces were only worn 1, 2, 3 games. And if you're a goalie with alts or reverse retros, maybe there was 1 start. Maybe there were 3 stars. You don't know. It's a lot of combative opinions when buying those styles, but some people swear by them. I like the whites just because they tend to show more, and I tend to gravitate towards those. I know that I'm never going to get to see those in person for the most part, but I like the white sweaters. Not necessarily a hot take, but for some, it can be. Oh, how could you buy why would you buy that? Or, why would you buy a third or an alt or a reverse retro? Look at the prices on that. Okay. Again, to each their own. Mr. Spaid, start with you. Does the style matter as far as a hot take?
I mean, for me, no, not really. When I looked at my collection maybe a year and a half ago, I went, I've got like 3 times the amount of away jerseys as I do home jerseys of any given team, especially Washington. And so I went out and I was like, as I move forward, I'm going to buy guys for home or alternate jerseys. I'm not really going to look for more away jerseys. But I mean, I don't think we can really comment on styles the guys are wearing now, teams are wearing now, because you can look at any style in the past. And for example, like the Wild Wing jersey for Anaheim way back, that ugly jersey. Everyone wants one now because they're just so outlandish with everything about that jersey. Whereas other jerseys that had alternates and whatnot, other people don't care much for. I don't care too much about style, but I think as people get further away from the current eras and looks of the teams, that's when style might become important. Whereas if I had a regular, let's say Washington Capitals jersey from 2017-18, like a red or a white, that's pretty cool. But someone might overvalue that Stadium series. It's a different style. And I mean, I would. It's a rare style. Same thing with any outdoor game. So I really think it just depends on what you're looking at for styles. But when it boils down to a player, when it boils down to the team, I think it's more important for moments than it is for anything else. As Stu said, with his Jeremy Roenick example, I think out of, like, for example, Washington 2018 Stanley Cup Finals, I think the 2 best jerseys on that team for Game 5 are Devontae Smith-Pelly and Lars Eller, which are 2 guys you would say, why not Ovechkin? I don't think they're the most valuable on that team. I really don't. And that's where it comes down to moments. And that's where I'll kind of close with my hot take, rounding it out, is that I think moments are the most important thing when it comes to a jersey. They're way more important than the wear, way more important than the name on the back. It's all about the moment. But for the styles, it doesn't really matter to me.
Jim, over to you.
So as Geoff was saying with moments, I would agree. So you're going to want the shirt in which he scored his second backhanded goal in a road shirt in the third. I may, expand on my earlier take, but no, going back to the real question was, I'm with you. Whites, because I feel like I can see the use better. So that's that for me. That's what I end up gravitating towards. But I agree with Geoff. I've done some stuff too where I'll look at my collection, like, I got too many whites, and then I'll buy a couple dark shirts to try and balance it out a little bit, make sure those are my next purchases. But yeah, that's always been my take going all the way back. I just always felt that your white jerseys showed use much easier and better and looked like they were more hammered. And you go back to that word, and in that case, that's what I gravitated towards.
Mr. Oxenhorn, take us home. Does the style of the sweater really matter to you? Hot take time.
Yeah, I think it's all case by case, depending on the collecting community. I'll use Philly and maybe even Chicago as an example. But as I collected by style, as a collector, I wanted a home road third, whatever, of every single different Flyers jersey. And, every different year I wanted a home and road. And I found, there are definitely different styles throughout, whether it's a Barry Ashby patch or, a Pelly Lindbergh patch or the 75th and 25th anniversary patch, all-star patch, all these different styles with patches with other things. And I think in some cases, I think it matters. That's why the case by case, I think you'll find the all-star patch jerseys that the Flyers wore, only one set of them in 91-2. Very desirable. Go for more money. The Flyers 73-74 shirts with the white nameplates, just a one-year style. Actually, they only wore those in 8 games. Definitely will go for more money. In that regard, yeah, style does matter. But, there are other rare styles The Flyers wore a set in 82-3 in the playoffs that had HSI on the hem for Hockey Specialty Inc. Nobody cares. So it just depends. And I know Blackhawks, I was just talking about someone has called me about a reverse tomahawk. Those things go for triple, 4 times what one that wasn't was worth. So I think in those case-by-case situations, style does matter.
Context is everything in the hobby. To sort of lift what was said previously, I love the reference to moments and connection. And that's what makes it a hobby and less of a business. The fact that you, as a collector, wanted to make sure that for as long as you're able to connect with that on-ice moment or that series or that milestone, whether it be the third slap shot from the circle that was deflected up into the stands, whatever the case may be, you want connection to that time. It does, that's why you love it. It also doesn't necessarily give the eventual seller, oh, well, this was the third slap shot was deflected. Look at that. And it's hammered. That's why it's now a $1,200 sweater instead of $499, which is what the masses should realize. Again, no judgment-free zone on this podcast, just lots of opinions. And as they've said for decades, opinions are like donuts. Everybody likes to eat them. Tales from the Warehouse, number 43. I know what the real phrase is. Many thanks to Stu Oxenhorn, Oxenhorn at MeiGray.com, Senior Director of MeiGray Vintage, Jim Montague, J. Montague, Montagu, at MeiGray.com, Vice President, MeiGray Authenticated, and Geoff Spaid, G. Spaid, SPAID at MeiGray.com, Director of the NHL program. Gentlemen, thank you. Until next time, I'm Scott. The warehouse is closed.